it's so ubiquitous to be anti-Trump that people who are very shallow in their interest in politics, I mean, I confess I'm not deeply interested in sports. If I would avoid the subject, but if I'm pressed on it, I would probably just repeat the last thing I heard someone smarter than me say, if, you know, like my son, for example. So my point is, the way I am about sports, a lot of people are about politics. So if all you hear is a shallow message track, Trump is racist, a Make America Great Again hat is racist, and you never really think about it, but when the issue comes up, you just say, oh, I know what to say. And so it's the casual ubiquity of it that becomes the normal. Well, yeah, we all know that. Everybody knows it. And you could never press anyone on that because their belief in it is so shallow. They've never tested the theory themselves, but they're not in the theory testing business. They're severely normal people who don't think about politics more than a few times a year. I think that there comes a point when you denormalize something so much, it's like cigarettes. And well, of course we're against cigarettes. Of course we're against littering. Of course we're, you know, there's certain things that they get past a tipping point. I think that's what your article says, am I right?
Right, and this has been a phenomenon in democracy in the United States since the early 19th century. I mean, Alexis de Tocqueville talked about the importance of public opinion. He saw it as a force of social stability, but he also said it could be a force of conformity. And not only does it keep people silent who disagree, but it actually changes their minds. If you are so used to hearing things put a certain way, you will begin to look at things differently than you might have looked at them otherwise. Many of our opinions come to us from other places. Very few of us sit and contemplate, very few of us have time to contemplate what we actually might think about a particular issue. If we did, we'd probably have better political conversations, but people just don't have the time and don't have the energy and don't want to engage in these kinds of arguments. And so they just find political parties are a neat approximation to what they might think, even if it's not exactly a good fit. And therefore, people basically conform to wherever the party is going. Now, that can be useful also, again, as Tocqueville himself said, there is some use to that. I'll give you an example. The flexibility on trade that the Republican Party is now showing is entirely due to Donald Trump basically saying we need to think about tariffs. The party had been essentially the party of free trade. Democrats had been more or less the party of protectionism, although there were sizable differences in both of those parties. Certainly the Democratic establishment was for free trade, even if many of the Democratic voters were not. But it took a President Trump to impose tariffs on China. Part of the reason he did so and was able to do so was that the people most badly hit by these tariffs are the farmers, not because the tariffs affect the farmers directly, but because China's retaliatory tariffs are striking our agriculture sector. And if Trump hadn't had the support of the big farming states, if he hadn't had that depth of conservative support, he would not be able to weather the political storm that would have erupted from the imposition of these tariffs and the countermeasures by the Chinese. So in a way, it takes some amount of social persuasion to bring everybody on board with something that society arguably needs to do to confront the threat of Chinese economic dominance. You needed Trump and people around Trump essentially to kind of create an environment where it was okay to conform with this, because previously it was not. But at the same time, you don't want people to be drowned out who are at odds with the current policy for whatever reason. And what's happened in the United States, again, it's not new. It's been going on for 50, 60 years, but it's especially acute now, is that the media, Hollywood, the academy, even elementary schools, communities, people are shunning those with pro-Trump opinions. Again, not because there's anything wrong with those opinions. In many cases, Trump is doing what every other president of both parties has promised to do, to get tough on China, to move the embassy to Israel, and so forth. He's doing all of those things. People ought to be happy that he's doing them, regardless of how they feel about him personally. But they don't even see that he's doing those things because you're not allowed to see Trump in a certain way. The conformity that's being imposed actually changes the way people think about the world. And I do think that's going to have an effect in 2020. Whether it's decisive, I don't know. But it is going to affect things.
That's an excerpt from the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a video monologue and then I interview an interesting guest. And then I end by reading my hate mail. But you've got to subscribe to it, which you can do at therebel.media/shows.